What's up, everyone? It is Ricci here from the F1 podcast. Hope you're having a great evening. We're recording this on July 20th, days before the Hungarian Grand Prix. I'm here with Andrew and special guest Tyler Hatherell. Thanks for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me on. Lots to talk about. So excited to chat about it.
And Erica sends her regrets. She's at a sporting tournament tonight. But yeah, we have a lot to talk about this weekend. Just want to apologize. We were supposed to record this last week, but we had some scheduling conflicts. So we wanted to move it to this week. And boy, a lot has happened since British Grand Prix. But before we kind of get into things, we have a quick announcement. We just hit 500 followers on Instagram last week. Now we're actually at 523. On behalf of myself and obviously our special guest, Tyler, really appreciate all the support everyone's been giving us from fans from here in Canada, in Toronto, United States, United Kingdom, and so forth. It's been an amazing journey, and we're almost about to hit 2 years. And as Erica said, a special shout out to Dirty Side of the Track podcast, and as well as I Give a F1 podcast, big supporters of ours, and as well as Trinity Common here in Kensington Market. So we really love everything. And, we just really very much supportive of this project. So thank you guys. How's it going? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been great. It's good that we actually moved it to this week. The pod, a lot happened.
Yeah, great timing. I mean, silly season's kicked off. We got 2 more races before the summer break. I mean, there's a ton to talk about in the world of F1. So excited for it.
Well, also, Don't forget, we're on Threads now, too.
Still trying to figure that app out. I think myself and Andrew have access to it. We really don't know what to make of it, but
it's really beginner like Twitter for sure. I would love that they incorporated some form of hashtag or whatnot, because it's weird tweeting without, or threading without really providing any context.
Yeah, I tried doing that on the account and it just didn't work. But whatever.
Everyone's too happy on Threads. Way too happy.
Let's keep it that way, though. That's why we're not on Twitter. Big race last weekend in Silverstone. Max Verstappen wins again, but also the McLarens showed very impressive, and McLaren's first podium this season with Lando Norris. But Andrew is going to be doing the honors this week. Max Verstappen did a fast lap as usual, 1 minute, 30 seconds and 0.275. Go right ahead.
I'll be 90 seconds. Yeah, exactly.
Do a barrel roll.
Whenever you're ready, Andrew, go right ahead.
Who's going to start? Who's going to clock me in?
Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1.
All right, Max started on pole with Lando and Oscar Piastri starting P2 and P3 with a crazy qualifying session on Saturday, which saw McLaren have some incredible pace with their Silverstone upgrades. They really took the headlines this week by bringing the optimal upgrades to Silverstone. And now are they the main contenders to fight RB this season? Well, we won't know. But off the start, we had Lando take the lead, which was an amazing reaction from the crowd. He led the race for about a few laps, where then Max retook the lead on lap 5. Hamilton, another Brit, had a tough start, but was able to gain positions in support of the British crowd behind him, which was great to see him and George fight up the field in the Mercedes. Another tough qualifying session for Checo, but he was able to gain position starting in P15 in the race, finishing P6 overall. But at the end of the day, Kevin Magnussen's Haas was on fire. I mean, literally, he was on fire. Lap 33, we had an engine failure, which then brought out a VSC for a full freaking lap. Don't know why that was a full freaking lap for VSC. Caught people out off guard in terms of when the safety car came out on lap 34 with pit strategies, where we saw the McLarens go on hards and then Red Bull and Mercedes go on the soft, which was a massive gamble by McLaren. However, it all worked out in the sense that they were able to finish P2, but Oscar Piastri got screwed. Safety car finishing P4. A tough weekend for Aston Martin overall, who did have pace. Tough weekend for Ferrari, who had some issues with the strategy. Williams had a strong showing with Albon finishing P8, and Max finishes P1. First win at the Grand Prix, or British Grand Prix. Second win at Silverstone.
Minute 34 seconds. I'll still give you kudos to that. Nicely done, Andrew, as always.
That would have been the fastest lap on the inners, I guess.
You lose.
I don't know if you guys noticed this, but really big weekend at the British Grand Prix. 480,000 fans went through the circuit gates this weekend. I think that's the largest ever for British Grand Prix attendance. And also, I think this is probably one of the largest attendance in history. I believe so. But nevertheless, I think, for a lot of people that came on expecting like a Red Bull dominance, it did happen. But also it was really nice to see Lando Norris pass Max Verstappen the first lap. So I guess kind of let's open it up to everybody. What really stood out this weekend, last weekend in the British Grand Prix?
McLaren, man. that was the team of the week. Like, they brought specific upgrades for Silverstone. They brought the chrome back into the livery, and it really showed. They kicked it back to a few years, like 2008, when they were rapid, and it was shocking to watch this weekend, considering how big of a jump they've been from being in the bottom of the field. Like, think about, we were at like talking about the bottom, Bahrain, rock bottom, 10, 11 races now. They were fighting for Red Bull for P1, with, Lando taking pole, then Max retaking the pole at the end there. But it was shocking to see how fast they were this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, full credit to McLaren. They deserve a lot of credit for the hard work they've been doing in the factory to bring those kind of upgrades. And it's one thing, I think, to make a step in terms of performance in the way that they did, but it's another to leapfrog the number of teams that are also trying to do the same thing and catch up to Red Bull. So it's funny. It makes me think about if you're in Lewis Hamilton or George Russell's shoes or Mercedes, and you've been trying to catch Red Bull and develop your car for 2 seasons now, and you show up to 2023, you're feeling really good. And now this is the second customer team that has surpassed them in pace, right? We've had Aston Martin show some rapid pace, and now you have McLaren being the second customer team that has surpassed Mercedes. And I think if you're in that Mercedes garage, you got to feel a little bit down on your ability to catch up to the Red Bulls, because having 2 customer teams surpass you like that can't be a good feeling. But on the bright side, I think what it does show is that it is possible in this era to develop your car and find that pace and to hopefully close that gap to Red Bull. And I think we all share that sentiment that we're hoping that whether it's McLaren or another team on the grid, they can continue to develop and really take the fight to them later in the season.
And just to add on Tyler's point there, especially that we've kind of talked about it in previous episodes, is we're kind of wondering who is going to be that number 2 that's going to be coming into like who's going to fight for drivers 2, or who's going to fight for like the second place in constructors. And with especially McLaren now showing some motivation, so there's kind of some life into the track. Obviously, Max is having an unbelievable season, but now I think we can kind of start seeing that now another team's going to kind of creep. It's like McLaren is a little farther away, but they're going to try to make this season a little bit interesting going into this, especially going into the summer break.
And now, like, being an Aston Martin fan, it's frustrating that how Stroll didn't take advantage of the car that he was given to early on, and he scored some good team points. Because if McLaren keep this pace up, we could be in a significant issue with regards to how should I say, them leapfrogging Aston Martin at some point in the constructors. Like, it's possible if they continue up this form. I know it's one race, but they still got to continue it up. Yeah, if you're an Aston Martin fan like myself, the issue that I have with, seeing is that Lance gave up some pretty good points at the beginning of the year with the car that he had, and now that we're kind of falling back a little bit in pace, if McLaren maintained this overall dominance, I know that was a one track Silverstone meant for medium high speeds. Let's see if their upgrades go fit for this, slower type track as in the Hungaroring coming up. But it still gives me cause for concern, because we have 2 good drivers over at McLaren and Lando and Oscar. And if they keep banging out these massive points performances, they could leapfrog Aston Martin at the end of the year. And for a team that was at P2 for the longest time in the constructors to then have to fall back, I know that we would say it's been an upgrade, but man, it's a little disappointing. And it's, sitting here as an Aston Martin fan, I'm wondering it's gut check time, and where are these upcoming upgrades going, and where are they going to get experienced?
I think I'm just going to jump there too, but it's not only so much like you think about Aston Martin, but like what do you think Alpine's feeling right now? To think about it, that they've had like enough points already in the season, and then all of a sudden, like McLaren just come out of nowhere and just leapfrog themselves.
Yeah, and if you think about it, Alpine is supposed to be a major manufacturer, right? Renault, a full works outfit, is supposed to be competing near the front of the grid, right? That's the expectation. And I just saw Laurent Rossi, the CEO, is now stepping away from the team. So interesting point, Ricci. I completely agree with you. I think if you're Alpine, you got to be pretty frustrated to be P6 in the constructors now, and no clear path back into the upper echelon of Formula One.
also, for bad weekends in Silverstone. I think Ferrari got screwed over by the safety car. I don't know. It was just kind of really tough, man. Just like the bad luck, the bad tire strategy. I don't know. And then had the hards on after the safety car overtaken by Perez, and then even Albon, like a Williams was just out driving two Ferraris. That's like, I mean, Alex Albon has been having a great couple of races lately. But geez, man, like what the heck is going on?
Well, I think it was a bit of bad tire. It was bad management though, with Leclerc not being able to finish his free practice session to kind of gauge how that hard tire was going to perform, or I forget what tires performed, but they took a gamble. They were really conservative on their tire approach, putting on that hard early. So that's what kind of caught them out on the safety car. So yeah, a bit of bad luck, but also a bit of bad management on their part, kind of compounded that issue with the bad luck on the safety car. And it was interesting to see how on the hards, Sainz was just getting getting overtaken by everybody. Even, yeah, he's mentioned Albon and the Williams, right? Like just deflating, and even like Leclerc's own teammate passed him for P10. And even at one point, Gasser passed him for P11, like for P10, dropped back down to P11, then thankfully retook him over again to get Ferrari, P9 and P10 in the race. But it was interesting to see how McLaren at the top with the hards were able to outcompete the Mercedes, right, with the rocket ship. So not only it was a key setup for McLaren, but is the setup not right for Ferrari as well? Just a lot of questions that come into play here for Fred and his team in Maranello. I don't know.
I was gonna say, wasn't Bonotto at the track too this weekend?
He was. So that may have been a little bit of bad luck for Ferrari.
No wonder why the strategy was so poor.
He probably put on a headset and tried to test it out, and then like all of a sudden he heard Leclerc and Carlos yelling at their engineers. He's like, "Well, I'm out. Peace."
It's cursed.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, no, I totally agree, Andrew. It was tough weekend again. I think I've been saying that like almost every other track. It's been a tough weekend for Ferrari, but I know Lance, he was in the points and then he got penalties. Williams, I think the talk to, I think, not a lot of people really talked about this, but like even Logan Sargent came P11, like the man, the myth, the legend from the United States of America coming P11, very close to the points.
That Williams is fast and, in a straight line, especially, but all around, I think we're going to see them more often than not be pushing to potentially be in Q3 on a regular basis. I mean, Alex has pretty much already done that this season, to the point where I was thinking to myself during that race, it doesn't feel weird or strange to see him, consistently in the latter stages of the point. That's just where he is now on a semi-regular basis. So yeah, it's impressive to see what Williams has been able to do with that car. And shout out to Logan as well. That's a good point, because P11 is a career finish for him in Formula One. So congrats to him.
Now, Tyler, tell me, who's going to have more Q3 appearances by the end of the season, him or Checo?
I think I would take just about anybody over Checo. I'd take myself at this point. All my time in the
that
sim,
guy just
put me in there.
cannot get his qualifying form in play. It's so crazy to watch.
He's still second. No matter how much he screws up.
It's incredible. I mean, seriously, like, what is his excuse going to be, this weekend at the Hungaroring? It feels like every weekend it's something. And when that's the case, then it just comes down to the driver. No matter how much bad luck he's had, track limits, wrong tires, can't get temperature in the tires. At the end of the day, it's on Checo to perform, and to be in that rocket ship of an RB19 and not be able to get the Q3, let alone put it, near the front row, is insane to me. So he's got a lot of work to do to get this season back on the rails for him. He's very secure in P2, as Ricci mentioned. So he's not really fighting for anything other than, pride, and, he might be feeling a little heat coming from behind him with the recent news of some new drivers maybe taking on later in the Red Bull family.
Main story of the week being Max winning his first ever British Grand Prix, second win at Silverstone because he won the 70th anniversary Grand Prix in 2020 during that COVID year. But Tyler, 11th straight win for Red Bull, tying McLaren. Max is 99 points up already 10 races into the season. He's won the last 6. He hasn't finished lower than P2 this year, and he's won 8 of the first 10. Is this the best season we're ever going to watch for one driver?
It might be, because here's the thing. And, we've talked a lot about this season, how Mercedes had similar dominance, during that period where, the W11, the W12 was an absolute rocket ship. But at the end of the day, Lewis was pushed to an extent by his teammate. I think, we all know what happened with Nico Rosberg, and we can, argue about his relative merits to Lewis, even though, Lewis is clearly a superior driver. And with Valtteri, we know, he certainly wasn't world championship material, but at least he was there, right? Mm-hmm. And Valtteri could put it on pole, even if he wasn't going to have the race pace or the racecraft to keep up with Lewis. As we were just saying, Checo can't really do that. And so that just has blown the door wide open for Max to really take over the season. And if you ask me, I can't see Max losing a race the rest of the season, bearing some, incredible development from another team, which is possible, or bad luck. If he's going to DNF, he's going to DNF. That happens in Formula One. I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen. But if it doesn't happen, then, I don't see why he wouldn't win every single race the rest of the season, as crazy as that sounds. And if that's going to be the case, then this is going to be, the most dominant season that we've ever seen in Formula One.
2 stats really quickly before we get into the next one. Last season, he had 454 points, and his last retirement was in Australia in 2022.
Incredible. But yes, on to some spicy news this week. Danny Ric is coming back, baby. I am ecstatic. So he had a tire test at Silverstone last week, where he was testing out new tire regs, the new wheel wells that would have been for the water. But the fact that he put his fastest lap in the tire test was 0.7 off Max's time at Silverstone to qualify. Just made Helmut Marko so giddy that he called the phone. He said, Nick DeVries, pack your shit. You're out of here. And basically said, Danny, you're going to AlphaTauri to finish the season this year on loan. I didn't expect him to be back in a paddock after 10 races so quick, to be honest with you. I think it's great, but this is a really interesting case for Red Bull now in terms of where they move forward for both their teams.
I'll just start really quickly, but obviously it's good to see Daniel Ricciardo back in a car. You do feel bad for DeVries because he's been wanting to have a chance in Formula One, and it was a tough car. Maybe it was some driver errors, but like 10 races, you're gone. That's the Red Bull motto. We've seen this with a number of their drivers, whether it's Danny Kvyat or whether if it's Alex Albon, Pierre Gasly. Yeah. Sorry, I can go. The list goes on, and maybe Mark Webber in a sense, but like for me, I think he's going to finish P13 this weekend. I'm just going to be very honest. I think he'll bring some much needed life in that garage, some much needed. I mean, everybody was giddy the fact that he's back. The man's doing like so many news conferences, and all the questions are to him, and it's just like, you're in the worst car on the track. So yeah, I think he's gonna bring some life, but yeah, I don't know. It's good to have him back, but we'll just see what the Honey Badger has to do. What do you think, Mr. Red Bull over there?
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think, at the end of the day, we don't really know how he's going to adapt. Christian Horner seems to think that, it's the Daniel Ricciardo old. He was waxing poetically about how when he first came back to Red Bull, he had picked up these terrible habits from McLaren, and you could see it all over the sim. And I guess he had been, improving steadily over the summer. And then, to Andrew's point, he didn't even make it through the tire test before they had made the decision to bring him back into the fold. So I'm excited. Danny Ric is one of the, most fun, best personalities on the grid. I think, this season of Red Bull dominance we've been talking about is needed a little pick-me-up here before the summer break. And I think Danny Ric brings a little of that excitement. So it's going to be cool to see how he does. And I think it's, at the end of the day, it's the right move, as tough as it is, for Nick DeVries. If you leave him in that car the rest of the year, you're not really able to properly evaluate, one, that car, two, Yuki Tsunoda, And three, you're not really putting any pressure on, the big team, namely Checo Perez. So I think bringing Danny Rick into the fold gives you an experienced driver that you can use to benchmark against Yuki, see if he's actually been performing, really well, which I think he has this year, but we don't know because his teammate hasn't been able to benchmark for him. And then add a little spice to the season because, if Checo can't start getting his act together, putting that car into, Q3 and taking some points away from the other teams, then, you never know. You may see the Honey Badger back in a Red Bull before too long. So I think that just adds another element of fun to all this.
Yeah, Tyler, it's funny you mentioned these points because, like, for me, I had three real big questions coming out after this decision. One, is this the right move for Daniel Ricciardo to restart his F1 career? We're surging in like the junior team at Red Bull, right? He's not a junior anymore. In that sense, he's more of a senior.
Based 35.
35 years old.
It reminds me of the Adam Sandler, Billy Madison when he's going back to school. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Andrew. My apologies.
That's a good point, right? He's going back to his roots, right? Starting with HRT, going into the tar, starting with the junior team, moving up in that regards. Is this a resurgence he needs? But also, is Checo's position at Red Bull now at risk? Back when Daniel left, Max never wanted him to go. And even Max mentioned in a statement today, I believe, during the press conference, that he never wanted Daniel to leave, despite Drive to Survive stating that they hated each other. But they never wanted him to leave. So I could totally see Max wanting Daniel to be back as his number two, right? In that case. So what does that mean for Checo moving forward from 2024 onward? And then also, is this going to be the real test for Yuki in terms of, can he just, put away the entire Daniel Ricciardo show and like just showcase why he is potentially a faster driver than Daniel, because he's been able to put that AlphaTauri in positions that should not have been able to go this season, unlike Nick. But with Daniel coming in, I think I think even Helmut mentioned it today, that it's going to be a test for Yuki to see how he can handle the pressure with an experienced driver on his team.
And I think for me, at the end of the day, that's what makes me feel so confident that this is the right decision, because at the end of the day, you can say it's not fair to Nick to not give him a full season. And I think that to an extent that is a fair comment. But if you think about it, at the end of the day, is Nick DeVries ever going to be a candidate to drive for Red Bull Racing? No. Is he a future world champion? No. Could you see him ever pivoting to another top team? No, not likely, right? And it's tough, but that's the reality in Formula One. And so if you leave him in there for the rest of the season, you're really just wasting that opportunity to benchmark your own team, right? So throwing Ricciardo in there really is a natural move because of all the things that you mentioned, Andrew, right? It allows you to properly evaluate Yuki for the rest of the year. It allows you to put a little pressure on Checo. And so I think, as unpopular a move it may be from a human perspective, and I think we all feel for Nick DeVries, for Red Bull Racing, it's really a no-brainer. And it's one of the reasons why they have such a huge advantage by having two teams, is because you can do stuff like this to test another driver and to see if Yuki Tsunoda maybe is ready to make that jump to Red Bull. We haven't talked about that. Maybe Checo's seat isn't under fire from Danny Rick, but if Yuki keeps doing what he's been doing this year, he's been in the Red Bull Junior program for a long time. Could he potentially be someone who could take over for Checo? I don't know. There's a lot of questions, but I think it definitely makes it more interesting. And Red Bull's going to know one way or the other what the right move is, I think, by the end of the season.
Just based on how Yuki's doing this season, I know it's not really the greatest comparisons. I feel like all eyes are just going to be on Daniel for the rest of the year. I think ballpark, maybe he can get that car 15 points, maybe 20 points out of that car. Maybe I'm leaning towards 15, but yeah, I guess it's gonna make, I don't think Checo was part of that, was part of the press conference today, because we're recording this on Thursday, but I'm curious to see how when they're both sitting down together and all the awkward questions coming from reporters. I can only imagine that. I don't know, what's points. What do you think? How many points do you think he's going to get this season?
I think he's going to get, let's say, of the final 11 races to go, is it 11 or 12? I think he gets in the points 4 times. I just think just based on the car, its limitations, if he can put that car in points, finishes it maybe 4 times, like a third of the way, I think that'll be a job well done for Danny Rick overall.
I actually was going to say the exact same number. I think 4 as well. So we're completely aligned there. Like looking at the constructor standings, AlphaTauri is 2 points for the season total. So if Danny Rick can, squeeze together 4 points in the final 11 or 12 races, like you were saying, Andrew, I think that's a huge win. So we'll see, but it's tough when you have a car so uncompetitive. I don't think we're going to see Danny Rick in the points on a regular basis, and he's going to have to accept that on a good day for him, it may be just P12 or P13, like Ricci was saying earlier.
Yeah, no, I think 15 points is maybe like asking a lot. But you never know with the silly season that Formula One could be. There could be a major crash that he would have started, and then he somehow makes it towards the points. But hey, nevertheless, I think we're really excited to see what he's going to do in Hungary and for the rest of the season. Just before we kind of get into the fun part about once a driver moves from a team or gets dropped, then it starts the whole chain of all the rumors that have come out this week. We got to give a little love to a Canadian icon, a legend, the GOAT himself, Nicholas Latifi. He finally came out of social media hibernation this week to announce that he's quitting racing for a bit, and he's going to pursue his MBA at the London Business School. And, we just wanted to say on behalf of the F1 podcast, Nick, all the best at school. We are going to miss you, but hey, you're always welcome back on this pod. You're always welcome on this pod. So, and you're always welcome back to Formula One. So
well said. All I can say to add is I hope he finds his true calling in the corporate ladder at Nutella.
Do a barrel roll.
That's all I want for him. Go to business school, CEO of Nutella. That's the dream for Nick Latifi.
I think this is a great move, honestly, for Nick. Ty's probably. I never thought of that.
But my
gosh, to see him in like a board, like in a position there at Nutella. He's a really well-spoken gentleman, and I think he's really got a savvy mind for business. I think he's going to do really well in his true calling after MBA. If he always wants to come back for racing, I think that'd be good. But I don't blame him with everything that went on, and people are still salty over 2 years later of that. And it takes a toll on you mentally as somebody who continues to receive probably threats to this date, I imagine, from Hamilton fans about how he ruined his chance to get an 8th title. But I hope nothing but the best. Really enjoy school, Nick. Just have fun with it, man. And I would love to see you behind the product development of future Nutella. That'd be great too.
So silly season now, with one driver coming getting kicked out and another driver coming in. The rumor mill is going to go. So I don't Andrew, how about we start with the rumors that we're seeing from your sources?
So based on what I was reading this week, Lando's going everywhere. You might be going to Red Bull because Helmut was having a meeting with McLaren's management team, possibly him competing with Red Bull and Max, as they've seemed to be good friends. I don't know if that creates like a potential Nico versus Lewis situation all over again. I also heard Lando was going to go to Ferrari, but he had legit like the quote of the week. Tyler, what was the quote of the week? I can't remember it.
Well, he said something about, or he was asked if the rumors were true about him driving for Ferrari. And I think he said something along the lines of, he's trying to get his first race win, not going to therapy. So I think that shows the state of where the Ferrari drivers are at. And if, you've seen a Charles Leclerc or Carlos Sainz post-race interview lately, then it is essentially a therapy session. So quite the quote from Lando. I had a double take to see if he, it actually said that or if it was fake. So shout out to Lando for the roast of Ferrari catching a stray bullet there.
Oh, I'm happy to show him arguing with his engineers in Sochi a couple of years ago. Totally okay to replay that video all day for him. At least Leclerc and Sainz has won a race. So let's just be clear here.
Touche.
Well, speaking of McLaren and Sainz, Johnny, there's some rumors that they have not signed their contract extensions yet, with their contracts coming up in 2024. We have Charles that could go to Mercedes, replace Lewis at one point. Sainz rumored to go to Audi in 2025. Like, what are your overall thoughts on this?
I mean, especially how the season's going, like go right ahead, man. Like it's just it's tough to be, I guess, motivated, because I think they only have 2 podiums this year. And this was supposed to be a bounce back year. There's like, maybe they were wanting to compete with Red Bull, and it's not looking like it's gonna be the year for them. So I mean, if you need to kind of start doing some window shopping and looking what's around you and see what are the potentials, like, I mean, go be it. Like, this is what free agency is all about. Is if you don't feel comfortable signing your contract, like, what's stopping you from going to talk to other teams?
I guess the question is just, where would Ferrari go from there if that was the case? I know there's, some other rumors swirling around the paddock. And I know, Andrew had spoken earlier about hearing Albon to Ferrari potentially. So that's out there. But, it's hard for me to look at all these potential options and think that it's an upgrade for Ferrari, right? Especially with Charles. I think we all agree that Charles is one of the guys on the grid who's probably closest to that, A tier of the Max and the Lewis and the Fernando. He's not quite there yet, but he's a guy who, if he were to get there, I wouldn't be shocked. And so for Ferrari to lose a guy like that, I think would be a tough loss for them. But, to your point, Ricci, Ferrari hasn't won anything. So what are you really losing at this point by losing a guy like Charles, right? It can't get any worse. So it's interesting to see, how that may shake out. But
well, I was just gonna add, the Italian media is gonna have a field day if he leaves.
They'll hate him.
I think there's gonna be riots in Italy. Marinello,
there might be. They'll be burning pictures of him in town squares. So it would be chaos. I'm here for it.
But like, just to think, Ferrari have had the likes of Fernando Alonso, Felipe Massa, Sebastian Vettel, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, and they haven't been able to win not one World Drivers' Championship or one World Constructors' Championship. And if anybody watches NHL hockey, it's kind of like the Leafs scenario right now, where they have these generational talents on their team and they can't seem to win the big one. And it's so frustrating to watch, because Ferrari is of such heritage and such amazing culture in F1. They should be challenging for these, World Drivers' Championships. Why aren't they? How did they not have the resources, especially back when Mercedes were, dominating and there was no cost cap? How did they just not spend a bunch of money every year into creating that kind of competitive car? It's just, it's tough to see how, this overall iconic team is now starting to fall by the wayside.
I don't know.
Reaches at a loss for words. He's just shaking his head here.
I'm literally looking at the Wikipedia page, just trying to have an answer, but I have nothing. It's like, I just do not. I don't know. It's maybe Kimi Räikkönen needs to come back. That's probably the last champion.
Guy. Yeah. The last guy to win you a drivers and a constructors champion. Well, no, wait, constructors, I guess, too, with Massa. But
constructors we wanted the next year in 2018, 2008. Sorry.
So, but still, that is 15 years ago.
Hard to believe.
You lose.
So let's talk about Hungary then. So we're going to the Hungarian Grand Prix. It's a Monaco without walls, as they say. You want to elaborate on that one, Andrew?
Yeah, it's a tight track. A lot of not just like one main straight. A lot of small, slow corners, and it's very tight with regards onto the track itself. So very tough to pass. Everyone remembers 2021 when Alonso defended like a lion against Hamilton for about 11 laps. There was really no spot for Lewis to overtake Alonso outside of the main straight going into turn one, and then that DRS zone going from turn one to turn two. Once you sit your car in the middle of the track, it's near impossible to get around. So that's what they call it, Monaco without walls, as they would say.
Yeah, it's really an interesting track too, because it's set up much like a karting track. As you mentioned, it's just very flowy. It's not one that you want to bring your low downforce setup to, because there's not a lot of straights, and it's very tight. That being said, I think last year was kind of interesting in that it bucked the trend a bit. And we did see some overtaking, which was great to see. And it wasn't just Max who did fly through the field from P15 to win, but it was George had a couple really great overtakes. Charles Leclerc was really great. And we also had the Alpines, if you guys remember, Ocon and Alonso battling each other. And it was a continuation of that rivalry. Some really good, wheel-to-wheel racing there. So hopefully we get that again. Because if it is, Monaco without the walls, I fear it's another, Max runaway win. So fingers crossed for some chaos this weekend.
Well, let's just get right into it. Just to rub the salt on the open wound of every other team here. Red Bull is going to be coming out with a bunch of other upgrades. And like, does that mean like Max Verstappen is going to be like carrying Sergio Perez in his car, like as like a side seat? Like, I don't know if you've like kind of like a trolley, but apparently they're projected to gain 0.2 per lap in pace, which, oh my goodness. And a redesigned cooling system. What is it? Over under 40 seconds you're going to win this weekend?
I don't know what the line is on FanDuel or DraftKings, but I'd be taking the over. Really cool look. There were some interesting rumors earlier in the week that Red Bull might take the Aston Martin side pods, but then also how funny would it have been if they showed up with no side pods just to rub it in the face of Mercedes? That would have been an all-time masterclass from Adrian Newey if they were able to make that work. But no, the look for those who haven't seen it, really, it's just an evolution of the current Red Bull side pod design. So the undercuts are a lot more pronounced, and the inlets where they take in air to cool a lot of the different components in the engine been narrowed, but also widened. So it's a bit of an interesting slim version of the existing Red Bull side pods, and Max seems to think it's going to make them at least 0.2 quicker, especially in the corners, which is good for Hungary, as we just mentioned. Very flowing track with not a lot of straights. It's a high downforce circuit, so yeah, they look great, and we'll see if that translates to the track.
It's like he has like a wing on in the mid body of the car with like how slick those new inlets look. It's quite a unique design. I can't wait to see what it looks like on track. But a lot of people are wondering with the reduced tunnel time, how they can find these 0.2. Well, from what I gather and understand is that these redesigns in the radiation and the cooling system, they're not part of wind tunnel time. So they've been able to find like this free 0.2 effectively in the upgrades. And that is like the key of having a genius like Adrian Newey behind the design of your car, being able to find time out of really nothing and go from there.
Well, it helps when, your chief aerodynamicist, Adrian Newey, has a wind tunnel in his brain. You can't limit the time there. So he's running the simulations. You don't need a wind tunnel when you got Adrian Newey back there. So yeah, I read that as well. It sounds like this took, virtually no wind tunnel time to develop. So, those cost cap penalties for Red Bull maybe aren't going to impact them as much as we once thought. So yeah, shout out to Red Bull for the development, and we'll see how it works on track. I mean, as a Red Bull fan, there's a part of me that does, hope that they're not as effective as we think, because I do want to see the field bunch up, and, seeing Max race against Lando, even for a couple of laps last weekend, was a lot of fun. But yeah, the new side pods do look really cool. I'm excited to see how it translates to the track.
And just talking about the uproar, like especially when Lando passed Verstappen on the first lap, like I'm pretty sure there must have been a noise complaint in Silverstone, the amount of screams and celebrations that could have potentially have. I think a couple of other comments, my eyes are just going to be seeing on a lot of rebounds. How is, Lewis Hamilton had a very good race in Silverstone. Is he going to be able to get back on the podium again in Hungary? Like, how is George Russell going to respond? I think all eyes is going to be on Checo. He might have a huge pressure, especially with Daniel Ricciardo back on the grid too, knowing that there is probably a target on his back now. So, go ahead, Andrew.
Is it like, well, I mean, if Red Bull's upgrades uphold here, there's no excuse for him not to finish P2 in qualifying this weekend. Like, don't give Red Bull's management team more of an opportunity to reconsider their position on you this weekend. Check out. That's all I'm saying. If you want to keep your seat, you got to perform this weekend. big time.
And I think just mostly, I think for Aston Martin, Andrew, like, what are some of the big things that you kind of hope to have for this weekend?
I don't know. It's gut check time for the team. Like, they're good in tracks with low corner speed or low speed corners, but they need to get the setup right this weekend. They did bring quote unquote track specific upgrades to Silverstone last week, but they were clearly downgrades. So they really need to get the setup this weekend to maximize full potential. We need points. I did think, though, it was kind of funny that even though we did have a very slow weekend last week, we still scored more points than Ferrari did.
You
I
lose.
don't know if you noticed that, Ricci, but I was kind of laughing at that point when I was calculating it out. But yeah, seriously, it's gut check time, considering that they were P2 for the longest time and showed a really fast car in the beginning of the season. Now they just kind of fallen by the wayside. Really need to kind of get it up back this weekend because there's a lot of questions that need to be answered overall.
Yeah. What's going on with that Fernando Alonso hype train? That was like huge, and then nobody's like talking about him anymore.
Well, ever since he made that comment about how they're not going to be on they're not going to finish away out of the podium for the rest of the season. He's only finished once on the podium, so it's a lot of questions to be answered. That's for sure.
Well, I think for Ferrari, I think mostly it's just going to be, can they figure out how to figure out a strategy? Can they deal with their tire degradation? Can they have a good approach going into the weekend? And I mean, I think it's going to rain again this weekend. So how do you respond in the rain on this track? I think those are kind of the things I'm just kind of going to be watching out for the boys in red.
What would you be happy with this weekend, Ricci? I'm interested in where the expectations have reset for Ferrari. If they were to come away from this weekend with a P4, P5, would that be
that's
maybe
fine.
Not happy, but satisfactory? Is that where Ferrari's at now? What do you think?
I think, yeah, because you kind of want to still stay competitive in the constructors, and you don't really want to lose points to your Aston Martin or give more to Mercedes. So whether if it is the Red Bulls come 1-2, and then maybe is it a Fernando Alonso or something, I think at the both, we just need to get both cars in the points and ideally top 5, and just hope just to kind of like get a good position going into the summer so they can at least have a break. But I'm thinking they need to at least get 4 or 5 this weekend.
I think that's a good point, man. I think they just need some confidence back in Ferrari. Especially as Tyler, you mentioned earlier, when you watch that press conference, what's like a post-race interview, they look so dejected because they know what the capability of this car is. They saw it last year, but just the fact that the team has not been able to uphold like their fast start last year it's really deflating.
It's tough to watch too. I think if you were to look at all the teams in the grid, just likability rankings on the drivers, Charles and Carlos would be right up the top, I think. Just two super nice guys. And it is tough to watch those press conferences after every weekend and just see how disappointed they are. So, there is part of me that's pulling for them. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think the beauty of this season, especially, after last weekend, is we don't know who the second fastest car is. I think it could be Aston Martin, but I don't know. It could be Mercedes, could be Ferrari. The McLarens now have entered the picture. So we really don't know who that, P2 team is going to be. I think it would be a lot of fun, though, to see Fernando back battling for a podium. It's been, 4 or 5 races now where the Aston's pace has struggled a little bit. And, he did say at the beginning of the season that the 2 tracks he had circled potentially for a win this season, not even a podium, a win, were Monaco. And, obviously he was very, very strong at Monaco. But the other one was Hungary. So I'm excited to see what he's got this weekend. I think, obviously with the Red Bull upgrades, it's hard to say, where they may, wind up. But definitely want to see Fernando competing for a podium. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think time will tell, and especially let's kind of just see where this kind of goes into the weekend. So on that note, thank you so much, Andrew and Tyler, for another great episode of the F1 podcast. Reminder, this is season 3, episode 19, 500 plus followers on Instagram. Let's try to get to 600 probably by the end of August, I'm thinking. That is probably my goal, and maybe might be asking a lot, but let's try to get to 1,000 followers by the end of the 2023. We are on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on YouTube, we're on Threads now. and we're on Instagram. So make sure to follow us on all of our social medias, and let's tune into the Hungarian Grand Prix this weekend. Thanks everyone for an amazing episode, and thank you, and have a great day.